Ron, thank you so much for joining me today.
Steve, a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
The pleasure is mine. So let's just jump right into things. Can we begin by you doing a introduction of yourself, your organization, and why you care about sustainability?
Certainly. So again, thank you for having me. Really a pleasure to be here speaking with you today. So a little bit about myself, our organization. My name is Ron Becker. I'm the Senior Vice President of Operations and Sustainability for Brandywine Realty Trust. Brandywine is a Class A office REIT based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We have a little north of 22 million square feet of commercial Class A office spread out predominantly, excuse me, down the East Coast, running from a little bit in South Jersey, predominance in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia suburbs. We then head down the coast toward Northern Virginia, a little bit in Southern Maryland there, down to Richmond, Virginia from there. And then we hang a right and go out to Austin, Texas, which is, I think, by volume, our second largest market at this point in time. We've been in business since the mid 90s, so north of 25 years at this point. And in my role, was lucky enough to be invited in to join this company about 5.5, almost 6 years ago. And in my role, I oversee a number of different aspects, all of which tie together very, very beautifully. So I oversee all of our property management and operations at the national level. I oversee our full ESG, or our sustainability program, at the global and national level. And I also co-own with our general counsel insurance and risk management.
Hmm.
Really, again, tying together, and since we're having an ESG related conversation, tying together those synergies of those climate and transitional risk related aspects that we must be aware of as owners in the modern day and age. To answer the last question in terms of why I care about sustainability, I think it's a very interesting question, and it's sort of an amorphous in the way it's asked. But bottom line is that who wouldn't care about those things in the modern day and age? The bottom line is that whether you believe in it or not is not the issue. The question is when you look at your books, your costs of operation, the way you're doing business, are you by instituting or instilling these programs in the teams and the staff and in the buildings, saving and finding value yield? Undeniably. Are you doing good at the same time for the environment or for the health and wellness aspect of your customers being your tenants? Absolutely. Or is the aspects, the vital components of an ESG program, are they demanded by the tenant base, especially in those in the Class A office buildings and in that flight to quality model that we so firmly believe in? The answer is absolutely. So I think the reverse question would be, why in the heck would you not want to be doing that at this point in time in this world we live in?
I wonder that question myself as well. We think of sustainability as simply good business.
Yeah, and it shows it because the returns are so much better. And the way that it's giving back to the organization, both from the pay to play model, because in the publicly traded markets, you're not getting away with not doing it today, but certainly in raising a much more educated property manager, bringing a team that can really work together to utilize the best practices of our vendors, of our building engineers, who are boots on the ground to say, hey, here's what we're trying to accomplish. What do you think? How do we do this better? Right? I think that real draw in of team is what I love even more about it, because you've got such a wide variety of ideas, and no matter where folks are coming at with whatever their perspective is, it just yields such great positive outcomes.
So let me ask you a question specifically about vendors.
Please.
Okay. And what I'm interested in is, what frameworks do you think are important, especially for those in your supply chain? And, what is it that you think is important that your vendors, like the people listening to this presentation, that they should be paying attention to so that they can provide you with the kind of data and information to help make your life easier?
That's a great question because that's really become that next bastion of where is everyone heading, right? So, and I think it's unfortunately very lopsidedly, everyone's pushing it back on their vendors, but they don't really know what they're asking for, or they're leaving it as such a broad, hey, what do you do for ESG? Well, I build buildings. That's what I do, and I don't know where to go from there. So, what do I find? I think the imperative will be to understand your business and operations and your downstream effects, right? So, when you think about things like scope three, and in this instance, scope three would mean to me the fuels, the travel, the distance, the materials that are being used by my vendors. I need them to be aware of that. There are, unfortunately, I mean, and if I say a select few, I'm talking less than I can count on these five fingers, of the companies that are out there that really do this well, or doing it in a way that is not overly taxing or monetarily taxing on these companies. And I don't like seeing that because their margins are already small enough to begin with. And as a business owner, I understand that. So when I look to negotiate with my vendors, it's never how much can I get from you, because I don't want to choke someone to death. It's not, there's no benefit there. It's a partnership. So the end of the movie is that there are companies that will start to evolve, and they will be using AI generation. I've already started meeting with one who I'm helping them develop their program so that vendors can show up, and I mean a very low cost impact, to just turn over all the information and have this company come back in an anonymized fashion so that the information is safe, and give our vendors, here's your scope three, here's your GHG footprint. Here are some opportunities where you can reduce, right? Those are going to be the keys of what companies like mine and others will need, because we have to report on what you, the vendor, is sort of impacting us with. I think the other component of that is really having vendors that are mindful of these things. I'm not personally asking anyone to take on the new, most, for lack of a better term, so please forgive me, I'm going to use the word woke, even though that's all over the place. But when we think about that, we think about modern day and the 25-year-old worker and what they're looking for. In my mind, it's not that. We're talking about the basis of operation. So really, again, knowing what your footprint is in terms of GHG output, knowing the materials you're using, and knowing where you're sourcing your materials from will probably be the most critical aspects of that initial, here's what I need from you.
One of the things that's really driving this particular initiative at ISSA is we really want to make sure that, our small and medium-sized members are able to participate in a way like you were talking a minute ago about the company that you're working with, so that we can help our members. And we also have this other little detail is we believe we should be the experts in the cleaning industry, right? That we should be able to go to you and say, oh, you know what? Here are three more things you haven't thought about that are material to this industry to make it meaningful for you. So that is precisely what it is that we're trying to work on.
I'm thrilled to hear that, because that is the belt and suspenders, right, of what we're doing together. And that's where the partnership is. Because to your point, I don't know the nuanced details of every one of your vendors or every one of the vendors and what materials they're using, what little chemicals or components they're using, or perhaps it changes, or when things go out of style because of, this or that. I think, again, working together is key, and more so working with the smaller vendors. The bigs can always get it. The bigs can afford to get it. Just like a big real estate investment trust, they can afford to spend a lot more money than I do on ESG programs that I would love to have, but it is what it is. So to your point, my approach is finding a way not only for the small vendors, but for the minority and women-owned businesses who are also smaller, more financially challenged, to also be able to step up and do these things because everyone's going to be asked to. So if we can't find a low-cost, low-impact way of doing it that doesn't make my contractor have to stay inside all day on a Wednesday when they should be out working, to me, that's a win if we can find that pathway.
What would you recommend to people getting started on their sustainability journey? And especially, again, focusing on the small and medium-sized companies, because you're right, the big ones can afford consultants, they can afford to hire professionals like yourself and have a whole team internal. But the small people, where do you recommend that they can begin so that if they were talking to people like yourself, that they are putting things in place to help them succeed in their business?
Well, I would start off by facetiously, but truly saying, take a breath. This is all new. It's like literally trying to take a sip from a fire hose, and things are changing constantly. So the needs that were my needs 3 years ago have shifted because new things have taken on. I would say the best and the most critical thing you can do is meet with the people with whom you're working, those people that are at the property management level, even their bosses if necessary. And if you've got that relationship, you should really be working with them on these things to ask that question of them. What do you need? Because frankly, by vendor type, I need different things. And also in the different economic levels or the different types of real estate levels, right? If I'm doing low-income housing versus Class A commercial high-rise, my needs are drastically different. So it's really a good temperature taking to meet with the people with whom you're working to see what is vital to them. From my side of the page, what is vital to me? Again, it's knowing where the materials are sourced. It's going to be knowing the chemicals that are being used. It's going to be knowing, are there alternatives to the chemicals that are being used, even though they might be the best. I mean, look, bottom line, the best insulation that was ever made caused cancer. So we don't want to use it anymore, but you can't say it wasn't really good at what it did. But the bottom line is we can't use that anymore. So same difference with these chemicals that have high VOCs, other types of issues. We want to go with greener chemicals. So it's knowing what you can offer, what you're presently using, but also what else is out there. So that my job, I run real estate. I have the luxury and the benefit of having worked my way up through the industry, almost in that Delta model of coming up through maintenance and plowing and all those things. So I know enough to be dangerous. But if I didn't have that background, I look to my partners, my contractors to say, hey guys, what don't I know? What should I know? What should I be looking for? So it's knowing all those different things and then meeting, because I may throw 5 questions at you that you may not have an answer to at that moment, which is fine, but at least you know where to go and find it. And then you create that rapport, that give and take. Because the bottom line is, and I will say this, understanding the audience that's seeing it, call me. I'm happy to have these conversations. There is no vendor that works for my organization, and I'm 6 levels removed from it most of the time. But I'm the guy that knows a lot about what we need, so I'm happy to have the conversation. The bottom line is that if I can help someone out and help someone to learn something in a very quick, easy fashion, everybody wins. And, again, we're all robbing the same train here, so better to work together.
So, oftentimes when I speak to people like yourself, and they give examples of, what they're looking for, they do exactly as you did, which is to talk about products. And you mentioned chemicals, and of course, in our industry, there's paper products, and there's equipment, and there's plastic liners, and there's all kinds of stuff that we use to keep your buildings clean and safe and healthy.
Yes,
Just one thought for you or question for you.
please.
What about from a social equity perspective? Because while obviously our industry does a lot with products, in some respects, our biggest, most material impact is with our people. So, any thoughts from a social equity perspective that would be valuable for people to put the information together, to give it to people like yourself that perhaps would differentiate them or help you with the information that you need?
That is a phenomenal question. And here's how I would respond to that. Yes, yes, and yes. The more I can be told, and again, when we're talking about that social equity, it is what is the diversity of your worker, right? How many female employees, how many female executives do you have? How many minority executives do you have? Are you a minority business? And to be really honest and to be really frank about it, and I've had this conversation with other peers of mine, is I'm not coming out to ask you to show me certification for the if you're a women owned or a minority owned business, then you're a minority owned business. And I don't want to make you spend more money to go certify something that is blatant. But having that data is very critical because it's something that I speak to and something that I will advertise for my vendors in terms of I can sit here right now and tell you, and again, no study notes, no nothing, 34% of my annual spend goes to minority and women-owned vendors. That's almost $4.5 to $5 million on an annual basis. Why? Because it's critical. Because it's critical to raise all ships and to make sure that everyone's competing. It's not a gimme, it's not a giveaway. It's an opportunity for us to find new vendors and to work with a very diverse group of people that can bring such added weight to the table. But in terms of telling me who's there, in terms of telling us, here's what it is, a little shorthanded little note of that, or perhaps putting that in a follow-up email after you've met and you've sort of touched on it. That's great information because that is going to move a needle with a lot of companies these days, because that's another component of what the C-suites, the boards, and everyone else is looking for, is diversification of spend.
Ron, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I wish we can continue. Maybe we can do another one in the future, but thank you so much. You've been extraordinarily helpful and you're greatly appreciated.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and I will take you up on that. We'll call it a penciled in date. I look forward to the next one.